America, but it was way worse before his movement. That's just one example of many. So don't just go into a mentality of, wow, the world is so bad, I might as well just give up. No, there is hope, and we have changed so much already. As long as you keep your spirits up, you motivate each other, be kind, and do what you can to make things better, great things will happen. So if you keep these three things together in mind, you'll never fail to find opportunities, or even create new ones wherever you go, be it in your studies, or in your job, even in volunteering. And more importantly, you will know how to distinguish good ones, like doing a Model UN, from bad ones, like deciding, oh, I'm going to go work for Petronas. So always try and do the right thing, and you will make a difference in the world. I don't know if there's time, but my father used to do various work with the UN, and maybe there'll be a quick moment for him to offer his thoughts on the matters as well. Come on, don't be shy, we're running out of time. So please, Mr. Ed and Sri Kelly.
When I worked for the UN, it's right here. Can you hear me at the back?
No.
I'm terrible with that.
这个比较长，这个比较长。Please follow this. 长点，长一点。
When I was working with the UN,
When dinosaurs still roamed the earth.
which was about 100 years ago, because I'm no longer young, things were very much different. The world has changed a heck of a lot from the time I entered the United Nations organization halfway through university. Things were very, very much easier. But the last couple of decades, I found that, sorry for you guys, things have become very, very tough. Entering institutions, finding jobs, basically staying alive has been very, very much different from my time. I worked with the United Nations as an advisor after university, and after having worked off and on for maybe about 3 years as a volunteer, or otherwise somebody volunteered me. I had no choice. Somebody said, you go and do this and do that. And I said, yes. It was good because it was an opportunity. You don't argue. You just quietly say, this may be a pretty lousy opportunity, but hopefully you're going to learn something. So that's how I managed to get into the United Nations. Afterwards, when I left university, I quickly find a number of jobs in the United Nations. None of them particularly exciting. There's a lot of work, but it was a great opportunity to learn a lot of things. What you want to do when you leave university is not to wander around, oh, where's the job? This job doesn't offer good salaries, and so on and so on. You just jump into anything. Today you have to do that even more. Any opportunity, you jump in it. Okay? So after university and working for the United Nations, it was very quick that I got jobs in various countries. For example, in the area of development, in the area of water conservancy, and also quite quickly became advisor to various governments, including the British government. I worked during the era of Margaret Thatcher under the Home Secretary as an advisor to an advisor. I'm not saying I'm an advisor, but saying I was an advisor to an advisor. And from there, I moved on, finding any opportunity to learn various things and to continue working. And even in recent years, say the last decade, I volunteered myself, or maybe somebody even volunteered me. I ended up in CATHOL, which is the Catholic Agency for Overseas Development, and I'm not a Catholic, but I was volunteered into a Catholic organization to work for overseas development. I am still an advisor to the Chinese government in the agricultural field. I don't know if you heard of 农垦部. I'm also an advisor to the 行政院, and I don't know the English name for 行政院. And still an advisor to part of the various organizations under the British Home Ministry. So that's roughly. I was also one of the earliest to be involved in the development of special economic zones in China. In Chinese, I think for the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone and the Xiamen Special Economic Zone. And I could quite proudly say that I was one of the youngest advisors the Chinese government had. But my salary at that time was bigger than the Prime Minister Deng Xiaoping. I earned more money than him. So this is roughly it. If you want to ask specific questions, please do. Shall we?
Okay, thanks, huh? Okay, so now there's time, I think, for a quick Q&A. If anyone wants to ask any questions, if anyone is brave enough. I'm going to sit while you guys think. No one has any questions, really?
Any question? Okay.
As this is a new activity for many of us, what advice would you give on the do's and don'ts of participating in the Model UN, especially in tackling big topics like climate change and sustainable development?
My test. 谢谢。感谢。So just to repeat the question, what do's and don'ts would I give for a model UN, especially on the topics of climate change? What was the other one? Sustainability. I think the most important one to appeal to that affects every country is that this is a universal issue. The whole world is getting hotter. So a lot of the main issues in the real UN is that the countries don't agree on what commitments they should make, because obviously the very developed countries want to stay like the US with their 3 fridges, 10 cars per family, whereas the other countries that are still on a very basic level of development want to catch up. So there's this friction. But I think it's important to remind people that we are all on the same planet. We can't all afford to run out of resources. So that's one way you can find something in common. If maybe your side of the Model UN represents Bangladesh, which is going underwater slowly, and the other one represents Canada or America, that's something you can appeal to. In terms of broader do's and don'ts, obviously don't turn it into a fight. Be respectful and listen to the other team. But at the same time, don't be very shy and meek and just read a tiny little script. You also need to think. The more important thing I would actually say is to learn the facts. Learn what are the important things that affect your country and the perspective that the other country might have. But don't learn it off by heart. Just know and think, what is relevant here? What should I mention? Listen to the other person and see how you can respond to them. Don't obsess with just reading one piece of paper. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Hay quá. Hay quá. Nhiều à. Nếu sao?
Do you want to come to the microphone?
So Malaysia is part of the United Nations. How does Malaysia contribute to the UN in any other way, either by green energy or economically, and I don't know, any other way?
I'm not intimately familiar with contributions to the UN on a per country basis, so I'm afraid I'm simply not qualified to answer that question, but thank you.
Thank you.
I do know, however, that Malaysia recently passed some green energy targets. However, I want to highlight that they are again non-binding. So if Malaysia doesn't meet these targets, nothing happens. I think that's something to think about cynically when we look at the world. Are people actually really putting their money where their mouth is, or are they just saying, yeah, we'll do this, and then when they don't do it, it doesn't matter?
When you work in different regions like Africa or India, how to make sure that your solution for their water management is actually fit their needs or condition?
That's an excellent question. The conference in India actually was mainly targeted around this, and all the experts and specialists there went around explaining specific solutions that work in specific circumstances. One of the ones they had was that in some parts of India, actually I think in many parts of India, the water pipes are very bad. They can't use them because if you put clean water through there, it won't be clean anymore. So they actually had trucks that would supply small amounts of water to very important locations in the city, and that was one way they ensured that poor people still had essential access to clean water. Other places, maybe building a pipe will be the right solution. Another example is in very rural parts of Australia, where Aboriginal people live. They're slowly trying to support decentralized power there. So off-grid energy systems that can work completely independently of other power networks that might be very, very far away. So maybe that solution is relevant for them. Another one that I discovered recently is building materials. Concrete, steel, these are obviously not sustainable. There is a bunch of different scientific communities in the world that are building materials, composite materials, that basically means it's a mix of different materials, out of completely natural products. To make new kinds of bricks, not out of clay, which is actually sort of limited, not out of concrete or steel, but out of combinations of wood fibers, sometimes mushroom, mycelium, and when it basically gets exposed to the sun, it becomes extremely hard. I even got to pick up some of the bricks and I thought, wow, it's just like a real brick. But the materials they use are completely different in different parts of the world. I think that's one that illustrates an answer to your question really specifically, because it needs to be materials that are available locally and also suitable locally. So yeah, it is definitely very important to consider local needs and also local availability. Great question.
还有吗？
Hello, OK，对氢能源氢能源的未来发展的前途了，就会普及嘛，就。
What your thoughts about the hydro energy? What?
Hydro, as in water, or hydrogen, as in hydrogen. Ah, now we're talking. So I work for the gas and energy regulator for the British government, and this is something that we're currently expanding into. It's actually kind of a complicated answer. So in principle, hydrogen is good. It can be relatively sustainable, or at least much more long-term than current things like petrol and oil. However, there's two classes of hydrogen. There's green hydrogen, which is genuinely good and great, and there's blue hydrogen, which is not really sustainable. It's hydrogen, but it's not going to come from a sustainable source. So it needs to be clear which one people are talking about. We mustn't let greenwashing, which is when you pretend something is green when actually it isn't, sort of cloud our judgment. The second thing, however, is that the world really heavily depends on cars, on motorized vehicles. Hydrogen doesn't solve this problem. If things are really far away and you have to have a car to get there, we have petrol cars now we have some electric vehicles, soon we'll have hydrogen. Cars don't grow on trees, somebody makes these. And making a car, even if it's going to run on hydrogen, is absolutely not environmentally friendly. It's extremely power intensive, it uses a lot of water, a lot of energy. It uses materials that come from all over the world. So when talking about hydrogen, it's important not to forget, as a part of this discourse, as a part of this conversation, are we changing the way our cities are so that things are closer to people, so that people can walk to things, so that they don't always need a car? My father lives in Kuching at the moment. You need a car to get everywhere. You can't step outside your house without needing a car. If you have hydrogen cars, great, but you still need cars to go everywhere. What a lot of people are starting to shift towards is the idea of 10 or 15-minute cities where things that you need, like food or essentials, pharmacies maybe, are within a certain distance of where you live. However, big petrol industries, which are also the ones that invest in hydrogen primarily, don't want to have this conversation because then there won't be as many cars, there won't be as much demand. So there's a competition between the petroleum industry, the oil industry, that wants to continue selling all of their petroleum or hydrogen products, and basically the common citizens of the world who want things to actually be more practical, closer, and easier to get to without needing to buy a car, which not everyone can afford. So it's a complicated topic, hydrogen. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry, I can't speak Chinese.
应该会比较清楚，就是氢能源还不是一个最好的解决方案。你要吗？Sibu，你要问吗？氢能源的发射网。
三个。
Local celebrity.
你不是会英文吗？
我不会哦。要英文，要英文。我英文才
A plus 哦。
我不懂，他叫我在问，为什么？可能就是问他对这个核聚变，你觉得这核聚变是一个绿色能源吧？然后你对它未来发展的宏愿，你觉得它未来的这个，你觉得它对就是它作为一个绿色能源能不能够发展的很好？
就是刚才那个换成
nuclear fusion 哦
fusion 是 B 哎
fusion
fusion
那个七龙珠里面那个那两个
巨是 fusion
还是用 fusion。
They're whispering about fusion. They think I can't hear them.
你试试看讲啊，你表达出来一下。
你可以的。
Hello hello。
还没开，没有开啊。
Hello hello。
我只是讲。
你讲话你讲到 nuclear fusion。Do you have any thoughts
我
on？
们在做一个研究，我们的研究是相关。
我没有就懂。
这更高级啊！你问他。
来来，我要先在头脑里翻译一下。发展人讲啊。
Development。
哦。
Future development。
我跟他讲我们在做研究。
讲啊。
他都知道你在做什么。
我们在做什么研究？我没有做这个研究。
你问。
We are doing research about nuclear fusion. Do you think it is a good solution?
Solution.
Good way to like develop green energy as nuclear fusion.
Great question. This is actually quite a complicated one as well. So nuclear fusion has existed for a while now. In fact, I think it was when I was in school, about 10 or 15 years ago, it first became successful, as in viable. You put in 1 unit of energy, and I actually remember the number, you get 1.06 units of energy out. So it's creating more energy than you put in, that's great. Today, it's even more efficient than that, but it's still quite hard to make it economically viable because you still need to put in a lot of energy to build the entire nuclear fusion station with the torus and everything, yeah. However, let's say, for example, we can make nuclear fusion stations anywhere. The problem is, are we actually going to do that? It's very expensive, and it's not like we're going to suddenly start building them in every single country in the world and everyone's going to get one. There are practical constraints to consider. That basically means, do you have the right resources there? Do you have the right engineers and staff who will be able to do it? Are other countries going to sabotage your efforts and try and steal your technical staff? These are real things that happen in the real world. So unfortunately, even if we have magical technology for free energy, countries are going to try and stick it to each other. The technology itself, to answer your question, is very, very promising. However, there's a little bit of cynicism because 10 years ago they said, oh, nuclear fusion very soon. And then 10 years before that they said, no, yeah, nuclear fusion very soon. And they keep doing that. Obviously, eventually it will become really economically and financially viable, but there's still going to be distinct limitations on who can build it and where. I think an important part of the conversation must be scratching our heads and asking, how much power do we really need? Because let's say we need 10,000 nuclear fusion stations to power the whole world, but maybe we only have the materials for 1,000 or 2,000. The question then will be, who has to give up some energy? Do we tell the whole of Africa, F you, no, too bad, no energy for you? Or do we tell the Americans, hey, maybe not 3 cars per family, huh? Maybe you don't need 4 fridges. Somebody will have to give way. Because the power doesn't come magically from nowhere, and you actually have to invest a lot of energy, a lot of infrastructure, and indeed a lot of technical training for staff to be able to build these things in the first place. So it's not so simple as it might seem.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, good question.
Well, I have another one question. Malaysia is one of the biggest palm oil producers in the world, but palm oil industry has impacted our environment heavily. What do you think?
I think it's bad. It's a very
How
short-
bad it is?
I don't have specific figures, but it is obviously devastating for the rainforest when you burn down large swaths of it. It's not going to recover for decades and decades. Actually, when I was young, when I was your age, maybe even younger than your age, obviously my family lives in Sibu. I used to visit my grandmother. Sometimes when we drove out in the countryside in the jungle, we see entire sections of it just on fire, being burned to clear the path. But it's worse than that. It's not just when you burn it, obviously carbon goes into the atmosphere. It's that it will take so long for it to recover. And palm oil is not even something essential. The world doesn't really need it. It's just used because it's cheap and good for cooking. So I think it's devastating, but unfortunately it has a great economic and cultural significance in Malaysia, so it'd be very difficult to get out of it. That being said, it's good that people are asking questions, and I think maybe a few generations ago, people would not dare to ask questions like you are now, so it's very good that people are thinking about it.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, thank you. Just before I close, because I know the microphone is going to be snatched off me, there's a few book recommendations I would like to make. The first one, everyone can read this one. It's very easy to read. It's called Conversations with My Daughter by a Greek guy called Yanis Varoufakis. It basically just explains how the world works in very, very easy, accessible terms. It's a great book. Definitely read it. The second one is just a link to the MUN advice that I was talking a bit about earlier. And lastly, this one is a little bit harder, but I still really recommend it. It's Piotr Kropotkin's The Conquest of Bread, which is basically talking about envisioning a better world where things are fairer, where not everything is capitalism, the richest person always has a head start. It's more talking about how can we fight problems like racism and sexism, colonialism, which obviously is a very significant thing for Malaysia, and what we can do to think about a world that is better. Not just thinking, oh, this one sucks, but going, hey, this one could be better. And lastly, I know if anyone was too shy to ask me a question now, or maybe if they haven't thought of that question yet, or even if just because there wasn't time, I have my Instagram handle here. If you want to type me a question, I would do my best to answer on there as well. So thank you very much for having me, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Carl, for your insightful and inspiring talk. And may I have you to stay on the stage and also invite Mr. Ed Zico onto the stage. Madam Star would like to present you to a token of appreciation.
Ambil gambar. Hai这边几次？你好了。